All right, we have one person so far. Let's move this one. Roger, can you see how many people have showed up so far?
Yep. Hi, Chris. Hi, Peter. It looks like it is four of us right now.
Gotcha. Let's just give it another minute or so, and then we can get started officially.
Of course. Okay, Sukhpreet, you have Chris, Peter, and Zach all here.
Gotcha. Okay, we can officially get started. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome aboard, and thanks for RSVPing to this event. And my name is Sukhpreet Mishra. I'm the assistant manager for our DMV region at Solar United Neighbors, and welcome to our info session. Not just for this co-op, but uh, just a basic info session around on the basics of solar and what we do. And welcome aboard. So before we get into the material itself, here are just a couple of housekeeping rules. For starters, as you can see, you have been muted for the course of the session. Having said that, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comment section, and my colleague Roger will be happy to answer them. And if there are any questions that we are unable to answer during the course of the session, you can reach us at dcteam@solarunitedneighbors.org. And again, you don't have to memorize that. We will drop that in the chat session. Also, if there's any material, given how technical it is, if you do miss out on something, you don't have to take too many notes. We will be sending a recording of this event on Monday next week, so you're not missing out on anything. All right. And for starters, before we get into the co-op and the fundamentals of solar, here's just a quick lowdown on who we are and what we do. So as you know, we are SUN, also known as Solar United Neighbors, and we are a vendor-neutral national 501c3 nonprofit. What that means is we have a mission to educate folks on the fundamentals of solar, help them go solar, and spread the word around any legislation or material that is relevant to solar in the United States. And in doing so, we still maintain a neutral face in the public. We just help folks go solar and answer their questions, but we maintain a neutral stance on most issues. And in terms of a national impact, as of this week, since our inception, we have helped more than 6,500 families go solar with us. That translates to around 53 megawatts of solar for someone without a technical background or solar background. All you have to know is that's a lot of capacity that we have installed. And in doing so, we have offset around 739,000 tons of carbon dioxide. How we got started, back in 2007, the person that you see over here is Anya Schoolman, who is our executive director. And that's her son, Diego, and his friend, Walter, here in the picture. Back in 2007, when they were in school, they watched this documentary back then. Not sure if you guys know it, but it was called The Inconvenient Truth, which went into the into the topic of global warming. That got them inspired, and they really wanted to do something about it. And they explored the scope for residential solar in the Mount Pleasant neighborhood here in Washington, D.C. Really early on in their research, they realized how tedious the process is and how pricey it was back then. And that's when they decided to officially form one of their own co-ops back then. They had around 100 people sign up, of whom around 50 people eventually went solar as a part of that first co-op. And that formed or serves as a blueprint for the co-op work we do in the DMV region and across the United States. Since starting out in DC, we have expanded to 12 states, and we continue to expand our work across the US and Puerto Rico. So as I said, 3 objectives. First one being helping people go solar, whether that's as a part of our co-op or outside the co-op, whatever works best for people. Number two, once you do go solar, or if they're just interested in understanding more about what renewable energy is all about, with the pandemic, fingers crossed, in the back mirror and going away or abating, we are holding more in-person events, and we hold info sessions or webinars such as this, where we try to go over the one-on-ones around this topic. And number three, we are at loggerheads with utilities and other folks in the renewable energy niche. So that's where we need your help. Anything to do with net metering or any other legislation pertaining to solar, that's where we need your support. And that's where we fight for your energy rights. And yeah, that's our theory of change. And lastly, and most importantly, while we are helping people go solar, the long-term objective is to help people strive for equity or help LMI neighborhoods in the long run as well. As solar grows more mainstream and attains economies of scale, it is going to get more feasible or economically viable for a lot of families. And that's our long-term goal. If we get more residential households to go solar in the long run, it will be able to compete with other traditional fossil fuels without any ITCs or other incentives in the long run. So what will we cover today? The presentation's been broken down into 3 segments. The first one is to go over the basics or fundamentals of solar technology. This will be very technical, so I'll try to break it down as much as possible without really going into the nitty-gritty. The second part has to do with solar economics, where you'll understand the financing options around solar and how much you can expect to pay in the long run. And number 3, this will focus on our co-op model, how co-ops work, the timelines around them, and the co-op we are running this year, which is being served by a solar solution in the district. So let's get started. For starters, what are solar panels? How do they work? They're also known as solar photovoltaic modules. And what they're basically doing, and I'm sure you know this, is they're harnessing the energy from the sun, and they're converting that solar energy into a usable form of electricity for your household. And this is an example over here. And this is what the individual modules or the panels look like. And I won't go into the details of what each of these submaterials or segments do in the panels. What you need to know is when you have one of these panels, it's just a panel in itself. But I'm sure when you go for a walk around the neighborhood, when you see these systems on your friends or neighbors' rooftops, it's usually more than one panel. And when you have more than one of these, it's usually called a solar array. And this is an example of a solar array over here. What you also need to know is, and I'm sure you've seen this, is the panels don't just directly go on your rooftop. They need some sort of a medium, which they're installed on, and then that goes on the roof. This is done to preserve the integrity of your rooftop and the panels or the solar arrays themselves. And generally speaking, most roofs are good for solar. This is an example of an asphalt shingle roof, but in the district and neighboring areas, we have a lot of flat roofs, which are still good fit for solar. So most roofs are good for this. The only exception would be slate roofs, which are a bit more complicated. And for folks who have actually gotten proposals from installers, I'm sure you know this. Slate roofs are tricky, and installers who are open to working on them, there is an added price tag on them. So just a heads up on that. And this is an example of a standing metal seam roof, which was done in the district. So another example that even with the flat roof, it is an option for solar. There will be, circumstances or some roofs which might not be good for solar. And I'll go into details about this on what makes a good rooftop for solar later on. But in the event that your rooftop is not deemed a good fit for solar by the installer, the alternative is installing a ground-mounted system. And this is one example over here. Just a heads up that if you do opt for this, while there are benefits in terms of orientation, more space, and other factors, there are added costs around this technology involving trenching and other processes. So while this is ideal in terms of harnessing more sunlight and providing more output in the long run, there is an added price tag when it comes to ground-mounted systems. Second component, the panels themselves, that's been covered, the inverters. What the inverters basically do is once the panels convert the sunlight that they're receiving into DC or direct current, the inverters are then converting the DC or direct current into AC or alternating current. They're doing this because they're converting it into a usable form of electricity for your household. And based on what we have seen in the market, outside our co-ops and in the co-ops, these are the usually the forms of inverters that we see in the market right now. The first one being the string inverters. This is used for most of the ground mounts or commercial systems. There is an added system now where they come with the DC optimizers. This is done so that there might be segments of your roof that are covered with shade or what have you. And this is done to compensate in the shortfall for the electricity. Microinverters are the alternative. And this is where each of these panels have these microinverters embedded in them. What that means is during those peak sun hours, if a part of your roof or panel is covered by excess shade, the rest of the system detects this and it compensates for that shortfall in the production on those panels. So that's also an option. But when you're considering this, the best way to determine what's the best fit is to speak to the installer, and they will guide you on the next steps or what's most feasible for you in the long run. The third segment, having covered the panels and the inverters, is the electrical panel. And this is more like a distribution system. Once the inverter converts your energy into AC or alternating current, it goes to the panel, and the panel serves as a distribution system for your household, and it's distributing that energy in the most efficient possible way for all your household electrical appliances or needs. Generally speaking, most electric panels in the district are good in the current state as they are. However, if your home was built or if the panel was set up prior to the mid or early 1970s, it might be obsolete or it might need a change or an upgrade. And the best way to do this is when the installer comes by and surveys your rooftop and the rest of your system, they will let you know if it needs changing, and they will do so as a part of the installation. But having said this, most systems don't need this, but just letting you know. So we have covered all the components. These are some of the terminologies or words that you should be familiar with when you're speaking to an installer or exploring your options in the solar niche. There are two of them. The first one is kilowatts. The second one is kilowatt hours. Kilowatts is usually abbreviated as kW. And this is the best way to measure the capacity or how much your system is made up of in terms of kilowatts. For example, what we have here, I think this is blocking this, but what you have here is a solar array of 6 times 2, 12 modules. And each of these modules has a capacity of 350 watts. If you multiply that by 12, that gives you a system output of 4,200 watts or a system size of 4.2 kilowatts. That's your system capacity. Kilowatt hours, now that's how much your system is producing in terms of electricity, and it's measured in kilowatt hours. This is what you're going to see, or what you actually see on your utility or electricity bills. This is what you're billed on. Now, while kW or kilowatts is fixed, you may have a same size or similarly sized system to a neighbor or a friend in the neighborhood, and your two systems might be producing two different outputs in terms of kilowatt hours. And that's how it differs. kW is fixed, kilowatt hours might differ depending on a variety of factors around your household. Generally speaking, in the district, an average size is anywhere between 6 to 7 kilowatts. And we get this question a lot of times. What's the most, how much are you expecting to pay for your system? And what's an ideal fit on your rooftop in terms of system capacity? And our answer is, it depends on your goals, your budget, what percent of your electricity bill you're looking to offset, and some of the other factors. Some people are really ambitious. They have a good fit for solar in terms of the roof, and they would like to offset all of their electricity needs, 100% and even beyond that. Some people, they're a bit more constrained in terms of budget, or they like to be a bit more conservative in terms of that. They start with a small system, which is offsetting or covering around 40 or 50% of their electricity needs. And then if they're satisfied with that, they expand the system in the future. Again, it's up to you, and it's best discussed with your installer before you make a decision. Having covered all that, and I know it was quite a bit of technical information, this is actually what it looks like on a diagram. There are 4 segments. Number 1, as I said, the solar array itself, which you see over here. Number 2 is the solar inverter, the electric panel, and then any excess electricity that's going back to the grid, and we'll get into that. So just to go over the process again, that's the sun. The panels are receiving the sunlight, converting it into DC or direct current. That current then goes to your inverter, which is basically converting it from DC to AC or alternating current. Once the conversion is done, it then goes to your electric panel, and the panel is actually distributing it across your household wherever you need that electricity. And I should have actually showed you this, but this is what it looks like. This is more text. Now, going to the final segment of this process, there will be instances where you're not consuming as much electricity as your system is producing. So your system is actually producing excess electricity. That electricity does not go to waste. It actually goes back to the grid. All that excess production goes back to the grid, and that's where the fundamentals of net metering comes in. Net metering is where, during the off-peak sun hours, or when your system is not producing as much electricity, instead of you being charged for the electricity, the grid actually supplies back that power to you, and you're not being charged for that because your system produced excess electricity. So in terms of numbers, this is what it looks like. So let's say during a specific time period, you took 300 kilowatt hours from the grid. You will not be paying for all of that because during the peak sun hours, let's say you produced an excess of 200 kilowatt hours. That's actually deducted from your electricity bill, and you're paying a sum of 100 kilowatt hours during that time period. That's why net metering is so beneficial to solar owners. And this is something non-solar owners cannot redeem during a time period or without a solar system. And again, this is a complicated topic. We do have more resources on our website. And if you have any more questions about this, you can reach us on dcteam@solarunitedneighbors.org. But this is one of the many benefits of having a solar system. And something I had stated before, but what makes a good fit or good roof for solar? There are 4 factors. Number 1 being the roof orientation. Generally speaking, when an installer is serving your roof, the most ideal part of your roof is any segment that's facing the southern direction. That's the most ideal, or that's the side of the roof that's producing most energy in terms of your system. Eastern and western directions are still fine, and they're still a good fit for solar. The only one that's not recommended is any roof front that's facing the northern direction. Simply because we live in the northern hemisphere, we're leaning into the equator. That's not so ideal. There might be some part of the summer during those peak summer days where that might be a good fit, but it's not economically viable. So usually any north-facing roof is turned down for solar. Number 2, when it comes to shading, an installer will serve your roof. And if you have more than, or at least 200 square feet of roof space that's not being affected by shade during peak sun hours, that's a good fit for solar. Having said that, in the DMV region, roof spaces are a bit more, they're on the smaller side. There's a lot of greenery or trees around them. So we do come across a lot of roofs that are 50-50 case for solar. And if that's the case, we would still recommend reaching out to an installer and asking them to survey your roof. Or if you actually want our opinion, you can also reach out to us. And our Go Solar team will be happy to survey your roof and let you know if it's a good fit for rooftop solar. Number 3, enough space. As I said before, installers ideally look for at least 200 square feet of open roof space for solar. There might be 50-50 cases, but that's the magical number. Now, there might be small obstacles on your roof in the form of dormers or any other mini structures. As long as there's 200 square foot, of open space, you should be good. That was a solar component of this. There is an added component that's come up in recent years and something that's gained a lot of traction in other states. That's the battery backup system or batteries. Now, batteries are really useful when power goes out, when the grid goes down, or when if you have any household requirements such as medical supplies or any other equipment that can never go offline. That's where a battery backup would be useful. Now, there used to be a common misconception that if I have a solar panel or solar system installed on my roof, if the grid goes down, it's going to cover all my needs. That's not quite the case. As a safety mechanism, when the grid goes down, any of the energy that the panels that were producing during that time, as a safety mechanism, the system is also shut off. So you will not be receiving any of the electricity that the panels are receiving, that the panels would be producing when the grid goes down. And this is done as a safety mechanism because we don't want any excess power going back to the grid where folks might be working to restore power to the grid. And that's where a battery backup is most useful. If you have that interconnected to the panels and the grid goes down, your panels will still be working and the batteries will be providing the energy or electricity that you need when the grid is down. And as I said in the previous slide, you might want to consider this option if you live in a region that's affected by frequent utility outages, or sorry about that, but if you live in a region where you know that you face a lot of blackouts. Number two, you might have critical loads at home, such as medical equipment or something related, which cannot go offline or which needs electricity or electricity or power 24/7. Or you might live in a region where you just want to be prepared for disasters or contingency situations. And again, generally speaking, in our co-ops, only a handful of people opt for the system. But as this becomes more economical over time, more people are considering this in regions such as Texas and Florida, where they're prone to disasters or they're prone to natural disasters or other issues or circumstances. And if you have more questions about this, you can't quite see the link here, but I think Roger will drop a resource around this in the chat section. And we do have more information around this on our website. And this is just more information on battery backups. But like I said, even though you install a battery backup, that does not mean you can have the luxury of running all the household appliances in your home 24/7 while the grid is down. You have to be a bit more selective in terms of what you really want to support on that battery. So for example, the Johnsons were someone who actually went solar with us in one of our previous co-ops. And they decided that if the power ever went out, they would be powering up their microwave, refrigerators, some of the lights, cable modem, and a small window AC. They were really selective of what they wanted to support on their battery backup. What they decided not to power or connect with the battery backup was their stove, dryer, and the electric water heater. Because if they did so, it would not be running for as long as they would have liked. It would have run out of energy or electricity. These are some of the frequently asked questions that we have received as a part of our co-op and from folks outside the co-ops as well. When it comes to warranties, the solar system itself, it has a lifespan of 25 years on average. And most installers that we have worked with usually give a warranty on that system in terms of production and other factors of 25 years. Now, recently, some of them have gotten the extra mile and they're offering a solar insure package of up to 30 years, but that depends on the installer you're working with. Inverters, they don't quite have as long as a lifespan. That's anywhere between 10 to 15 years. And that's also accounted for in the warranty package by the installer. Homeowners insurance, there used to be a misconception that if you install a system on your roof, your homeowner's insurance will skyrocket or what have you. Not quite the case. Just work with your agent or what have you, or just let them know of your intentions to install a system. They'll walk you through the process and make this economically viable. But contrary to what that misconception is, those rates don't just go up suddenly just because you install the panels, just because you install a solar system. Maintenance, that's another benefit of of owning a solar system, besides the fact that it's covering all of your electricity needs and offsetting them for 25 years and possibly longer. But one of the benefits is once the system is installed, it sits there, it does the bulk of your job, and it requires minimal maintenance or minimal monitoring. Now, in instances where you do detect that one of your panels is underperforming or underproducing, that's where you can reach out to the installer, let them know of the issue, and if your warranty covers it, they'll come over and help you with this. You do not have to climb up there and take care of the issue yourself. How long do the systems last? As I said, panels average of 25 years, possibly longer. Inverters 10 to 15 years, but again, it depends on the brand and what kind of inverter you're investing in. When it comes to HOAs and their involvement, generally speaking, unless it's not mentioned or specified in the statutes or the contract when you signed or bought that home, an HOA cannot forbid you from installing solar on your home. Having said that, we do encourage you, or we just recommend folks to be transparent with your HOA, let them know of your intentions, and walk them through the process. And lastly, if you reside in a historic district here in DC, that's not a disqualification for solar. We had folks in our previous co-op who lived in those regions and they still got their installations done. All you have to do is let the installer know of this, and they will install the system in a way that it's not public facing or viewable to the public on the general streets, and you should be fine. But they will customize it in a way that it's consistent with the local rules and legislations. All right, this is the second part, but before I jump into it, I do see some questions in the chat. Or Roger, you have anything for me?
Yeah. Thanks, Jose. Wanted to ask about batteries and about if batteries, when the power goes out, if your solar charges the batteries directly, or how, and just more about how that works.
Right. So, like I said, when the grid goes down or what have you, that's integrated to your solar system. So your panels are effectively powering those batteries, and in lifetime, that energy is consumable for your household. So that's the benefit of having a battery backup. If you did not have the battery backup, then you can't really use the energy that the panels would be producing when the grid is down. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, and I would also add just that with batteries, they'll size your system to make sure that your batteries can be charged completely every day. So let's say the power is out for 3 days in a row. Depending on the time of year, ideally your system would be able to fully charge your battery to get you through the next day for whatever loads were on that circuit.
See anything else, or
that's it for now? Thanks.
Oh, okay, I just see like 6 bubbles on the chat, so I just assume it's perfect. Gotcha. Okay, so moving into the second part, or the solar economics section. So as I said, back in 2007, when Anya, our executive director, was exploring the pricings around solar and what have you, it was really pricey back then. It was not competitive, and it was more of a small niche in terms of the market share in DC and other areas around the United States. Since then, costs have dropped by almost 73% over the past decade. It is really price competitive and more viable for most families. It's no longer some kind of a niche or boutique project at this point. Once you install the system, even with the upfront costs, there is an excellent return on investment, at least for residents in DC, given the SREC market and some of the other incentives. And to add to this, the federal tax credits, which are capped at 26% this year, that's another benefit. And it is going down to 22% next year and into 0% from 2024 onwards, but I'll get more into that in one of the other slides later on. Breaking down the cost of solar, you don't have to really go into the nitty-gritty of this chart, but as you can see, around half or more than half of the costs when it comes to solar for installers is soft costs. So this has to do with permitting, marketing, spreading the word, and customer acquisition for most installers. It's a considerable cost for them. And that's where we try to fill in that void with our bulk purchase pricing or bulk purchase model. What our co-ops are basically doing is we're trying to garner as many people into one group, and we're saving them on those costs. And that's how our solar co-ops are competitive compared to the open market, and help you save on money, or help you save on that solar investment versus going solar on your own in the market. So as I said, the federal tax credits, which are 26% this year, they're going down to 22% next year, and they'll be gone altogether in 2024 onwards. This is something some of the major solar organizations such as SEIA and what have you are trying to extend. But again, I mean, there's nothing in writing right now, so we're going with this model right now. We're trying to get a lot of these installations done this year so that people can incentivize that 26% rate, or at, even 22% next year. But there's no uncertainty from 2024 onwards. And this is something you can redeem if you have large enough of a tax liability in terms of your federal taxes. And this is something you can capitalize on when you're filing your tax returns next year. So this is a lot of numbers, and I don't want you to get overwhelmed, but this is just a breakdown of our pricing when it comes to solar, how it pays back in the long run. And this also goes into SRECs, or solar renewable energy credits. So instead of going over both these system sizes, I will give you an example of a smaller or conservative system size of 4 kW or 4 kilowatts. We're going to use an average price of $3 a watt, because this is what we have seen in our co-ops. And for a 4 kW size, or 4,000 watts, you multiply that by $3 a watt, and that gives you an average price of $12,000 for your system, for a 4 kW system. Assuming you have a large enough federal tax liability or federal tax burden, at 26% of 12,000, this is how much you can offset from that. And that gives you a net cost of around $7,800. And this is how the system pays back in the long run. When it comes to these annual 10-year and 25-year electric savings, we're calculating this on the assumption that the electricity that you would have been purchasing from your utility, such as Pepco, what have you, you won't be doing that anymore because your system is offsetting those needs. And we're also assuming an average escalator of 2% every year. And that gives us an estimated savings over 1 year of $455. Over 10 years, that goes up to $4,800. And over a solar system's lifetime, assuming 25 years, that's almost $13,500. On top of this, there's also the benefit of SRECs, or what we call solar renewable energy credits. And without really going into too much detail around this or confusing you, this is something that's only available in some of the states in the United States. This is more like a production incentive. This is something the local government has incentivized for both homeowners to invest in solar systems. And how it works is, for every 1,000 kilowatts or 1 megawatt hour that your system produces in clean solar energy, you receive a virtual credit. For a 4 kW system, we're estimating that you will get around 5 credits or 5 SRECs every year. And how this works is, you can go to an SREC broker, and there are 2 major brokers in the region, Sol Systems and SREC Trade. You can go to those brokers and sell your credits or sign a contract where you can sell your SRECs to them, and you get a revenue stream out of this. Right now in the open market, we're anticipating, assuming you go with one of those options, you can get around $5,300 through the sales of those SRECs. But again, this depends on what kind of contract that you sign with the broker. And this is a volatile market, so it does change over time. So this is another added revenue stream. This is how much you can generate in terms of revenues by selling your SRECs. Over 25 years, this is your estimated profit, around $11,000. For an 8 kW system, that goes up to around $22,000. But again, these are just estimates. One size does not fit all. And this is subject to changes in the rates provided by the utilities and what the SREC market looks like. And sorry, just to go back, we do have a lot of resources around our financing and pricing options on the DC homepage. So I'm sure Roger will drop this later on, or he has probably already dropped this in the chat section, but feel free to explore that as well. And when it comes to financing options, the best case scenario is where you can finance this on your own, and there's the upfront cash option. In the event you can't really do that, there are other options both in our co-op and outside the co-op as well. It's on our financing page on the DC website, but there's the option of taking loans. There's also the option of PPAs or signing a solar lease. Just a heads up over there though, while the upfront cost of the solar installations will be minimal or even free for a lot of people, you will be foregoing the ownership to your SRECs or your tax credits in the long run. So while you're still getting almost a free installation or the benefits of clean energy, you won't be able to incentivize or redeem those ITCs or tax credits or the SRECs that the system produces. And then there's also the option of REAP, which is one of the grants, but this is an exclusive niche, and I don't think this applies to most people in DC at least. But we do have resources around this on our website, and you're welcome to check it out. And again, when it comes to loans, when you work with the installer, they do have partners who can guide you through this, and they will get you signed up through them. At least with Solar Solution, who are working with our co-op this year, one of the most popular packages we have seen is Easy Solar, among others. But again, the best, we are not financial experts. We recommend that you work with installers on this. Something we have seen, at least in the DC region, is Clean Energy Credit Union or a Community First. These are some of the other options, but again, we leave it to the installer to guide you through this process. And before I jump to the last segment, Roger, any questions or we good?
Yeah, I have a question right here.
Sure.
Any thoughts on how getting the recent executive order by President Biden about eliminating those potential tariffs will affect prices this year in terms of residential installations?
Yeah, that's a great question. So just to provide some more context around this for folks who are not aware of this issue, I would say early on this year, there was a small installer based out of California. They were called Oxen Solar. And they brought this to the attention of, at the federal level, where some of the installers that were based out of China or Southeast Asia, they believe were escaping these tariffs or foregoing these tariffs. And there was unfair competition from them. And they requested an executive level investigation on this. This spooked the solar industry over here, and it brought a lot of uncertainty earlier on this year. It was supposed to affect mostly the commercial market in the solar niche, but it did affect some of the residential level solar installers as well, given the uncertainty around the supply of these solar panels and what have you. Last week, there was welcome news that President Biden, at least at the executive level and what have you, decided to suspend the investigation and suspend any potential tariffs into the solar industry for the next 2 years. I work with Sun, so I represented them at a meeting with SEIA a couple of weeks ago, and that's like the solar umbrella or the major organization that was advocating for us with President Biden and his administration. But to our understanding, this is a temporary solution by freezing these tariffs for 2 years. It's not a permanent solution. This is welcome news for our installers this year. Having said this, any price uncertainty or volatility won't just go away overnight. This will take another couple of months, 3 or 4 months to go away, but this will affect mostly commercial installations. We would still recommend that you explore solar options, not just in DC, but elsewhere. If you're based outside DC, you will still get really economical prices with installers. And at least in our co-op, we check in every week. We have not had any pricing issues. Our vendors have no issues with the supply chain. So the prices that we locked in March for this co-op, they're still the same. So what I'm trying to say in a lot of words, this affected the commercial niche of solar mostly. And this issue will go away with time over the next 3 or 4 months. But I hope that answers the question, but Roger, feel free to add anything else.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. Yeah, I mean, DC, luckily, the pricing with the co-op was really good this year. And that's been locked in. We haven't had any problems with it. So that's great. There are a couple more questions. I'm happy to take the
Sure.
next one, which is how was Solar Solution chosen as the installer for the group? And so when the first Mount Pleasant co-op happened, the group got together to review bids. So Solar United Neighbors is pretty unique in that we do not choose the installers for the group. Basically, we issue the RFP and a request for proposal, and that goes out to the list of about 300 different solar installers that service the Mid-Atlantic. And people decide if they operate in the area, what their pricing is like, how busy they are in terms of work. So some people, their calendars are already full, so they don't want any more installations. It really just depends on the installer. So we got a group of bids for the co-op, I think about 5 bids this year. And then when the co-op reaches 30 people, that's when we send out those bids and then get it to a selection committee. So I think the co-op's up to about 55 people right now. So about a month ago, it was at 30 folks, and they got together with Sucrete and with me, and we went through the bids with them, and then they chose an installer for the group. So they chose Solar Solution out of the different bids. So some of the reason is that they're a DC-based company, because there are always some national bidders as well. And then also, from what I remember from the selection committee, they have really good reviews. And then one of the other reasons that the group liked them is that I think about at least a third of the people in the co-op have flat roofs, and they had a very low flat roof adder. A lot of installers primarily focus on asphalt shingle roofs. So one of the things that they liked about Solar Solution is that they do a lot more flat roof installs. So because of that, they didn't have, I think it's only a 15 cent per watt additional price. And some vendors, have like a 40 or 50 cent per watt additional charge to do a flat roof, because they're not set up to as many flat roof installations. Yeah, so the selection committee is decided for the group, and then as the group grows, obviously, the installer is already there, and some people, have already signed contracts or already in permitting, et cetera, for the group. And to create this last question, I will turn it over to you, and I can also help answer as well. Are there any advantages to oversizing your system? I received a quote for 130% of my usage. I understand I could sell the SREX, but aside from that, with net metering, you can only offset your own usage, not get paid by the utility. Is that right? Why would someone want to generate over 130% of their usage?
No, that's a great question. So as of this year, I mean, there is the option to oversize up to 160% of your existing electricity usage and what have you in DC. And like you said, one benefit is, with a larger system, it's producing more electricity in terms of kilowatt hours, which means more extra credits, which you can sell through the broker. Besides that, you're also preparing yourself or oversizing the system for any potential additions to your home in the future in terms of household appliances or future consumptions. And number 3, it's net metering. So during those peak sun hours with a larger system, you're producing more. And during those months, say in the winter, where your system is not producing as much, you're still not paying as much as you would be to the utility, because any of that excess electricity production, you will be compensated through the fundamentals of net metering. So those are the 3 benefits. And that's why, most people, if they have the budget, they can oversize up to 160% of their system. And that number is going to go up to 200% by 2024. So I think those are the 3 benefits. But if there's anything I missed out, Roger, feel free to add it, or feel free to give your thoughts.
Yeah, I think the only reason to oversize your system is really in anticipation of future usage. Because I mean, SRX are great, but yeah, I got an EV this past year, and that made my electric use skyrocket. But yeah, if you're planning on getting a heat pump or a heat pump hot water heater or anything like that. Also, a lot of people, their electric usage has increased a lot with work from home as well. Okay, we'll turn it back to you.
Cool. So moving on to our last segment for this presentation is more to do with the co-ops, the co-op model, the co-op we are doing this year, and how it actually works. So why join a solar co-op? For starters, like I said, because it's based on a bulk purchase model, or what I call the Costco model, we get a lot of people to congregate together. The bigger the group, the more bids we get from installers. And because we're covering a lot of their soft costs, that gives them more of an incentive to provide an off-market price or below market price. So in most co-ops, you're signing up with for a discounted rate for those panels or solar system. Number two, when you join the co-op, if you have any questions about your system, about the whole process, if you want to reach out to the installer, or even after the installation, if you're having any troubleshooting issues or any other follow-up questions for the installer, we're happy to reach out to them. We're happy to answer those questions for you at no cost to you. That's one of the benefits. We walk you through the process and we answer any concerns or queries you might have about the co-op itself. Number three, you're joining other solar enthusiasts or other folks who are interested in going solar, and you can also actually reach out to them. That's something we're doing as a part of this DC co-op, where we created an exclusive DC Google group where you can run your proposals by each other or bounce ideas off each other. And number four, this list keeps growing every year, but you're becoming a part of that growing solar movement. And we would love for you to join our happy hours after this co-op is over, or not. But you're actually adding to the benefits of the solar revolution, and you're investing, or you're becoming a valuable stakeholder in the clean energy revolution. And now that you know the benefits or why you should join the solar co-op, this is what the process looks like, or what the timeline looks like. And again, a lot of words, a lot of numbers and colors here, but just to break it down for you, we can break it down into 3 segments. The first couple of months is where we host info sessions such as this one, where we give people an idea or a 101 on solar and what the co-ops are all about. If people are interested, we will give you the link to join the co-op, and you can apply for the co-op. Our team will evaluate your roof to see if it's a good fit for solar. If it is, we'll add you to the group. Number 3, we'll ask you, or our state directors will get in touch with you and ask you to spread the word around the co-ops, because the bigger the group, the greater the benefits later on. Number 4, like Roger said earlier on, once we have enough members, and the magic numbers are around 30 to 35 members, we issue an RFP, or a request for proposal, for installers in the region. What that means is we are letting installers know that the co-op is open for your consideration. Send us your best bids, or send us your best package for the co-op's consideration. And once we have enough bids from installers, we then sit together one of these evenings and we do what we call an installer selection committee. Again, it's not an obligation as a co-op member to attend that selection committee, but if you're really sensitive, or if you really want to know who the bidders are and you really want to be a part of that selection process, you're welcome to join it. And how it works is it's usually between 1 to 2 hours. We go through each of those bids step by step. We brief members on any numbers or any questions that they have. But at the end of the day, that selection committee has the power to select an installer. We just guide you through those questions or those bids. We do not make that selection. The selection committee does. And that's the benefit of the co-op. I mean, you have the power at the end of the day to select the installer you would like to work with. Another benefit is when installers bid on the co-op during the RFP process, we don't just accept it blindly. Our Go Solar team does our due diligence, does background checks on them, checks their reviews, customer references, and any other red flags that we may identify. And we bring this to the attention of the selection committee, and also follow up with the installer about this. But having said all this, once we select an installer, we then issue an announcement to the rest of the co-op, letting them know that we've picked an installer. That's where they start reaching out to co-op members and providing customized proposals for them. And once you provide that proposal, members usually have a 30-day window during which they can sign the contract. But again, it's not that restrictive. If you need more time than that, just reach out to us and we can accommodate your requests. For example, in this DC co-op, someone's out of town. They have a proposal from Solar Solution and they need more than those 30 days. We were happy to accommodate it. But if you're happy with the proposal, you're welcome to sign the contract, which is between you and the installer. And then once all the permitting and all that other approval stuff is done, the installation itself takes anywhere between 1 to 2 days. And then we have a happy hour or an event at the end of the co-op. But again, this is what the co-op looks like. And for context, with our current DC co-op, we've already done the this info session where we gave you a lowdown on the basics of solar. We have the website up and running. We are at the stage where we've already done the selection committee over here in step 4, and we are actively growing the group. Right now, as of this morning, I believe we have around 30 to 35 members in this co-op, of whom 8 have signed a contract so far. Another 16 are sitting on their proposals, and as a part of the DC team, I'm answering their questions about their proposals, and we expect that number to grow. Just keep in mind that that co-op is open to members until the end of August this year. And after that, we will close that co-op to new members because any of the benefits or prices that are offered in this co-op are time bound. It's just for this co-op and we can't keep it running forever. So just a heads up that if you're interested, there's still time, no pressure, but you can join it until the end of August this year. So what's next? Now that you know everything about solar, the fact that Solar Solution is serving this co-op, if you're interested, you're welcome to join the co-op on this link. If you would rather wait till next year, no worries. But just a heads up, there's no cost to join the co-op. You can join the co-op, get a proposal from Solar Solution, and if you're still uncomfortable, or if you'd like to bide your time or wait till next year, you can leave the co-op at no cost to you before signing a contract. So no upfront cost to joining the co-op, no costs to leave the co-op before signing a contract. There are not really many downsides. So this is just up for your consideration. And on behalf of me and Roger, thank you so much for attending this info session. I'm sure you have more follow-up questions, so feel free to reach out to our Go Solar team on dcteam@solarunitedneighbors.org. I usually moderate that inbox, so you will be hearing from me if you reach out. And Roger, do we have any other questions, or are we good?
Yeah, I have one last question from Zach.
Sure.
If we think we're going to need to do roofing work before the installation, how does that fit into the timeline? And will the solar installer have a roofing recommendation, et cetera?
Yeah, that's a good question. So if you know that you need roofing work done, we recommend that you get it done before the solar installation itself or along with the process. Assuming you join this co-op, what's going to happen is just bring it to the attention of Solar Solution and we will be happy to do the same. Installers usually have roofing partners, so they will refer you to them, or if you find your own roofers, you're happy to explore that option. They'll get that roofing work done. Once it's done, then the installation will take place later this year. And no pressure on that. Once you sign the contract or once you're part of the co-op, the installer will be patient with you around that. And I do not know any specific roofing partners that Solar Solution has, but happy to follow up with them about that and I can get back to you. And, I think that covers it, but Roger, any other thoughts about that process?
Nope.
Or?
Yeah, that's it. They'll have someone that they can recommend. And also, yeah, if you let us know, we're happy to help get us looped in as well.
Sounds good.
Great, yeah, and also they'll be able to do a brief review, because even if they don't do the roofing work themselves, they have a lot of experience on DC roofs and evaluating how much time they have left, et cetera. No, that's it. Thanks so much, Sucrete. And yeah, just feel free to be in touch with us. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. What's this?